Listen, never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Can't get enough baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
Hey, Mike Hazen, you know who I'd rather have on the podcast right now?
A million other people?
False. Nobody. Nobody.
All right.
What?
Great. Let's do this.
I've never had anybody so overtly begrudgingly come on this podcast.
I'm paying a debt. I'm paying a debt that will keep between the two of us.
Oh, okay, we won't.
I made a deal with the devil earlier in the season, and now I'm with you being the devil, and now I am paying up. That's what I'm doing.
I appreciate your honesty, and I want to congratulate you. This is going to be the worst received compliment in the history of baseball by me congratulating you on an interesting season, a good season.
That I don't want to be complimented for that. That's not a compliment, right?
No, it is. I mean, it is.
You get complimented in this game by making the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. I guess you're right. The kid in the tunnel at the Lakers game saying "good effort, nice try."
Yeah, no, that's for something else, not for professional baseball.
Not for professional baseball. Anyway, I hope that you've had some time to breathe, to reflect. I don't know. What do you
think that reflection has consisted of?
What is
self-loathing? A lot of self-loathing. Yeah.
No, come on.
Maybe by the end of the World Series. Maybe
you got to move on.
GM meetings?
Oh yeah. We're doing the podcast from the Alamo. We already said this.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. But by the time we sit on top of that Alamo, you'll be having turned the corner. You'll be talking trades. You'll be talking free agency. You'll be talking about team building. You'll feel good about things.
You know what I'm convinced of?
What?
If we were in the Alamo way back in the day, you would have left. You would have run out the back door. That's what I'm convinced of. Is that true or false?
That's false. Who is the ride or die guy? Again through these clandestine communications for the Arizona Diamondbacks all the way through. I was.
You were.
I was. Yeah.
And Peter Gammons.
Well, I mean, yes. So great. Hall of Famers, 2 Hall of Famers on your side. But I take, in case people don't know the history of the Alamo, because podcasting is such a young demographic, chat GPT it. So, there you go. All right. So, there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about besides this. By the way, I don't want to forget this. I do feel like there is still some magic in the baseballs and boring brand for the Diamondbacks, as we have articulated and shown throughout. Maybe not 100%, but enough. And you say, well, what is that magic? What is the next level of that magic? Well, you, Mike Hazen, and everybody else who was in the room behind you, scurrying away as you got on this call, yelling, what a great podcast, how lucky you are to be talking with Rob Bradford again. They are going to find out the Baseballs and Boring hats are coming out next week.
Oh. Didn't you tell me you were going to give me some T-shirts?
Yeah, at the GM meetings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They're still in the mail?
What?
They're still in the mail?
No, I don't trust the mail.
Oh, okay.
You know what? As I found out, this is what happens when I send boxes of things to teams. They get stuck under a bunch of things in the corner after 2 people take them. No, I hand deliver them. That's where the magic's at. Anyway,
let's get down to business.
Yeah, let's get down to business. What how does one in your position prepare for a World Series? So I talked to, before you answer, I talked to Mike Chernoff, Cleveland, the other day, which I'm sure you saw. And it was interesting what he said about, scouts and how scouting has changed and so forth and so on. But I do think it's interesting, team president, general manager, whatever title you have, how you're preparing how does one in your position prepare for the World Series as Brian Cashman and these guys in Brandon Gomes and Andrew Friedman are right now?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of staying out of the way, honestly. At this point in time, the staff and the coaches and the scouts are doing all the work. Our involvement is, well, at least from my standpoint, is more about the roster itself. And that's working with Torey and the coaching staff on what the roster should look like, how they're going to deploy the roster, right? That's the biggest thing we do. I mean, as far as the advance goes and what the scouts are focused on, they've been working on that all month, right? So both teams have probably had sets of scouts on these two particular teams since end of September, in some cases, beginning of October at the latest. Teams of guys that have now moved through the playoffs and have seen every one of their playoff games. And so they're pulling all that together, giving Torey or the managers in these cases their insights into exactly how these teams work, how they tick, what the manager does, what the tendencies are there. From a front office perspective, we're out of the loop on a lot of that stuff. We watch the games, so we have some of our own opinions on particular players. But I think the biggest thing is walking in where the hot spots are. Like, I think the questions that I hear the most from the coaching staff is, what should I attack and what should I stay away from? And some of that's obvious, right? I don't know what you stay away from either of these two lineups, quite honestly. The tops of both of these lineups, you got to get through 4 or 5 guys before you can at least breathe at all. But there's probably matchups in places where they're going to target, going into each of these games. I'm going to try to get this pitcher against this hitter if it works out that way. So
how much debate, like you could use last year as an example, how much debate is there in those rooms? And, I come back to, I remember what Alex Cora said about 2018, where he pounded the table for Joe Kelly because they needed velocity. And then Joe goes on this really good run. I mean, that's like one of a million examples. How much debate is there or was there last year?
There's not a lot of debate at this point outside of 1 or 2 things or people or spots, right? You've gone through the playoffs to this point. At this point, your lineup's solidified. How you're going to use the lineup is pretty much solidified. And then there may be a matchup or two on the other team that you're going to try to exploit. That maybe you take an extra left-handed reliever because they're top heavy with lefties. And, when we faced the Phillies, like, they had those left-handed hitters that we needed to try to figure out a way to neutralize and, things like that. And so that could change somewhat from series to series, but by and large, like, one of the overriding factors is, going still with the guys that got you there. So a lot of those guys still make the roster, and there weren't a lot of changes. Maybe you have a small injury that you need to cover for, and you might take somebody off that might be a little banged up. But other than that, it's probably one matchup on both sides that you're debating, which is you taking the guy that's going to run, play defense, play a specific position, and you're going to actually pinch hit for somebody going into a game because of what they might do. And then on the flip side, where you look, what do you need to attack with your bullpen against their lineup? Well, how their lineup necessarily sets up, that's different than the previous lineups. So those are, and we might spend an hour on that. It's not, there's not a ton of decisions, but the ones we do, we overanalyze, or at least we did to the end of, whatever. But ultimately, I always used to just push back on Torey and just say, how are you expecting to deploy the person? Are you going to use them? If you're going to use them, then we'll put them on the roster. If you're just guessing you might use them, then I don't know if it makes as much sense. So tell me that you're going to use this player and how. And then when he makes the case for how he's going to do it, then we would make the decision a lot of times that way.
Well, that's the ultimate, that extra guy that going back. I don't think it's done quite as much anymore. That pinch runner, the designated, the Dave Roberts, the Quentin Berry, the, whoever. It's not done as much anymore. I don't think. Is it? Do you think?
It's not as critical to me because we've found a way to have it on our roster anyway. And I think that's probably why. We have a lot of base stealers on our roster to begin with. So if one of those guys was on the bench, they were always going to run in front of somebody we would put on. And so I don't know. I think teams probably have more skill sets represented on their rosters anyway. And then, there's some large percentage of your team that you're not taking out of the game. And unless it's you're down one and 2 outs or 1 out, and you got to score on a double from first, and then if you have a slower player, you'll have somebody on your roster that's faster, right? Mm-hmm. So that makes a lot of sense to make that move there. But no, we haven't really. That hasn't been a focus. Wasn't a focus for us.
Before I get to the pitching stuff, is that when you're talking about when you face a team and you face the Rangers, is there a thing that bubbles up to the top saying we have to do this in order to beat this team? You mentioned the Phillies getting those lefty hitters out. Like, we have to do this in order to beat this team. So really, really, let's focus on it. Or is that just too simplistic?
No, it can be very simplistic, I think. And I think because I think that's easier for all of us to focus on and then go try to deploy, some type of strategy. I mean, baseball is 52 different types of strategies you can employ on a daily basis if you wanted to, right? On how you're going to deploy your personnel and what type of matchups you're going to try to. But I think keeping it simple to try to attack, the most dangerous part of their team is probably where we spend the most time having the debate of what that is, right? Mm-hmm. What in fact, and that's where the scouts come in. That's what the scouts bring to you, is like their opinion of, we've watched these teams play now for 25 straight days. We would not let you face Kyle Schwarber with a right-handed pitcher. Like, we just would not do that if it were up to us. And then Torey has to sit there and decide, okay, how am I going to line that up? Can I line that up? He's going to hit at the top of the lineup. He's going to roll around 4 to 5 times. If the game gets, if there's hitting going on, how am I going to be able to deploy that? Do I need that extra left-handed reliever in the lineup? So that's very simplistic. It's probably broader than that, but there are things like that. There might be 2 or 3 guys or situations that you may get presented with that don't let this situation beat you if there's runners on base or if the game's on the line, right? So that's what the focus is.
And in these teams that we're talking about this year, it's pretty obvious. I mean, it's like there's both teams. Here are the guys. Don't let them beat you. Unfortunately, you don't always have that option. Right,
these 2 teams, don't let them get up to the plate, right? Yeah. Like, keep your offense on the field.
Make sure you score 12 runs.
Yes.
So I've been thinking a lot about your statement that you had in spring training about, hey, or even I think maybe at the end of the year last year about, hey, we didn't have enough arms. We had to throw a bullpen game in Game 4 of the World Series. Well, Mike, everybody's throwing bullpen games all over the place. His relievers have more innings than starters. Even in the last year, has that mindset changed? And the one thing that I will say is that my own thought is that I do think this is the importance of having what the Rangers had last year, for instance, or what you guys had in Merrill, in Kelly, in Gallen. It's so important to set everything up. But has it changed even from last year, the mindset?
It hasn't for me, and I'd caution to sort of put too much into one specific playoff run and the teams that are in it and how they're constructed and what's happening right now. I don't know. Maybe I'd have a different opinion given the offensive firepower that seems to be in the playoffs going on right now. It may have been a little different last year. I mean, there were some high-scoring games, but maybe not to the degree that you watched that NLCS and it seemed like, the teams were scoring every single inning. I still don't. I still think that starting pitching and going out there and establishing and getting into the middle part of the game, giving the manager a couple of things that they have to deal with to get you through to the end of the game is a better bet. Bullpenning games it's tricky because you got to watch for matchups coming for 9 innings against you, and then you still have to. I know there's still a decent amount of off days in the playoffs, but you still have to plan for how much you're going to run these guys out and. You start running these guys. I know at the end of the year, everybody says, hey, everybody's available all the time. And it's true. Guys pitch day after day after day. But at some point, the effectiveness wanes, right? That you get used so much that no matter how good you are, you're going to lose a tick off your fastball or off the movement or off the spin or something's not going to be the same. But you're the same guy, so you're still going to get run into those same situations. I think that's the trick more than anything for me is how do you maximize their performance, the bullpen guys' performance? And if you're constantly bullpenning the games, you're just asking a lot from a volume standpoint from those relievers. And there's just obviously it's harder to control in my mind. So I would still choose, if we could, do it that way, but I don't know. You gotta play the hand that you're dealt. And when you can match up your bullpen guys, that usually gives you the best chance to have the best matchup you can have as many times through the order It's just hard to do that day over day after day and then get to day 30 and still be able to do it.
Yeah. I mean, my thing with bullpen games is that all it takes is one. All it takes is one. All it takes is one in a tight game. All it takes is one guy having a bad, having control, blowing up. So what is there anything that surprised you about this run of these two teams? I mean, you obviously played the Dodgers a ton.
Yeah.
The Yankees. Anything to surprise you? No. Nothing.
These teams are loaded and they're incredible, and I think they're both of them are hitting their stride right now. We faced the Yankees very, very early in the season, which you can make nothing out of coming out of spring training. And obviously we faced the Dodgers a bunch, and getting through the tops of those lineups it's very, very difficult. I equate it mostly. The Rangers were somewhat like that, but I think the Phillies that we faced in the NLCS with the way they were swinging the bats when we went in, that was probably more akin to what we're seeing here. And it's, I don't know how you prepare for it. You got to pick your spots and who you're going to pitch around, who you're going to challenge in those situations. And as you know, once you start putting guys on base in these situations, you're going to get yourself into trouble.
Yeah.
So,
math would suggest Shohei Ohtani's good with guys on base.
These two teams they're the two of the better teams all season that we would have faced, and they deserve to be there. And it's probably, two big market teams going at each other is probably good for the game and good for the sport, and the biggest names on the planet are playing. My lights just went off. Sorry.
Oh,
we didn't pay the bills out here at Salt River.
Wait, whatever saves money for the next big free agent acquisition. But is there any maybe you don't have an answer to this, but playing the Dodgers as much as you have, I know we know about the top of the order. We know about their strength. Is there any underlying thing about playing them that they do well that we might not be like smack us in the face? Or maybe there isn't. I don't know. Maybe it's just as simple as, you have as John Gibbons said, if you have more cannons than the other guy, then there you go. You're going to win the war.
Yeah, I think the contributions they're getting from the bottom of the lineup right now, it's almost impossible to stop. Because you can think to yourself during the season, if we can get through 4 or 5 and neutralize them some, get some outs at the bottom of the lineup, but Kike is going to hit home runs all the time. Like you're I don't know, where do you go? Right? Where do you go? Those are sometimes the areas for pitchers that they can lower their pitch count, go after guys, challenge them, maybe get some early outs, but they grind at bats so well that when they're doing that and when Mookie's on fire, like what are you going to do? Where are you going? Because you can't when they're at their best, you can't throw the ball out of the strike zone. You have to, because you don't want to throw the ball. You don't want to throw them a strike.
Yeah.
But as soon as they start making you throw strikes, you're dead.
How has Luke Weaver changed?
How is Luke Weaver? Well, he obviously made a pretty significant change to his delivery since we had him, and the life on his stuff seems to have ticked up a ton. His personality in these situations, he's clearly, he's embraced. When we had him, he was more of a young starter. We were trying to get him through that starter phase. We had a small run with him as a reliever, but not a long period of time necessarily. But he's clearly taken to this role and the mentality of it. And you can see how he attacks the strike zone. He's so aggressive that we're happy for him. It's one of those things where you wish it happened for you, with you, but that doesn't always happen that way.
Hey, listen, you identified him. He was on your roster. There you go. Good job.
Is that like kind of I have an interesting baseball team compliment? That doesn't get you very far in this game.
I'm
Rob.
trying to build you up.
Haven't we learned this by the third or fourth?
I know. I'm going to crack through.
Endeavor. You're not.
I'm going to crack through that salty exterior.
Are you?
Last thing is, so what will you be looking for? I know this is like, if you want to answer, you can, but what will you be looking for in the off season here for your team?
What we'll be looking for in the offseason. This is my platform out to the 29 teams, so I don't have to make any phone calls.
Yeah, you can do what Dave Dombrowski
Do you think 29 other GMs baseball isn't boring podcast?
I mean, the answer is obvious, but I always come back. You just had a room full of people who referenced Brent Honeywell as soon as for good reason, because he was the most recent guest
Maybe the problem is my front office is watching this podcast and we're not actually out there making phone calls. Maybe that's the problem. What are we looking for in the offseason? We have some impending free agents that we'll see how it goes. Once you get to this point, you never know what's going to happen. And we had a very good offensive season, so we're going to want to make sure that we bring some of that offensive firepower, back to where I felt like that carried us in a lot of ways. We need to improve pitching wise. We weren't very good this year on the pitching staff. So our run prevention is going to be an area of focus for us, both defensively and on the mound with our pitch execution. So we have a lot of starting pitchers, which is a good starting point for me going in any off season, because that's obviously the trickiest thing to acquire and to figure out. So those are the main things we're looking at.
That's a good answer. I mean, it wasn't Dombrowski saying I'm going to trade for a closer and sign a top of the rotation pitcher. You weren't with the Red Sox then. That was the Kimbrel Price thing. Yeah.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah. So anyway, it's what I'm referencing all things. Anyway, I appreciate it. The agreement isn't that you have to be on for a certain time, so I'm going to let you go. It's just that you have to come on. So,
right. Well, the agreement was in the middle of the night or anytime you called me, right?
I think I was pretty sympathetic to you.
Very magnanimous of you. Yes.
Thank you. But when it comes to going to the top of the Alamo, that is a must. So
okay. We'll do it.
All right. Thank you.